What's up guys, this is Pokert, coach of the Phoenix Jolts in the Littleroot Lessons Draft League Fair and Square Edition. Today we have my week 4 match against Lemmy, the coach of the Midwest Miltanks. He's actually right there on the left on the screen. First of all, I want to give a big shout out to Lemmy because he let me use his Twitch VOD because I forgot to record my side of the battle this time, so I just wanted to do a post commentary over his side of the battle and I can kind of explain like what I was thinking. So here we kind of get a quick glance at his team. He's got the Miltank, the Clefable, and then the Chandelure as the big threats there. Clefable is going to be pretty annoying for my Dragapult to deal with, and then he's got the Rotom-Fan, Crobat to set up Tailwind, Starmie that can possibly Icy Wind or Flip Turn or anything like that, and also just do heavy psychic damage. So I didn't end up seeing a lot of his items, so it's cool to see these on his end. The Key Berry on Miltank's very interesting, and then the Scarf Rotom as well, maybe trying to wisp the Dragapult before I can get a physical attack off. On my end there, I ended up bringing in the Mr. Mime this time, and then Tentacruel, Crocodile, Gardevoir, Buffalon, and Dragapult. For this week, I just last minute put the Tentacruel on with a weakness policy, which is kind of just a standard set, I guess, but I felt like it would do more work than what I initially planned, which is Skarmory, into what Lemmy actually smartly didn't bring, but the Garchomp that I was expecting to come out, which was a big threat to my Dragapult, obviously. So he sends out the Crobat and the Clefable on his end. The Crobat has the Tailwind for speed control, and then the Clefable is definitely a nuisance for my Dragapult to deal with, being able to do super effective damage and redirect Dragon-type attacks away from his other Mons and just absorb them, being immune to Dragon. So I kind of have to deal with both of these at once in a sense. So my lead of Crocodile and Mr. Mime, not going to be able to do the most damage into either of these, but first of all I wanted to stop the Tailwind on his end because it was definitely going to be more difficult if he had Tailwind and everything being able to potentially outspeed my Dragapult. So I just went for a Scarf Icy Wind with the Mr. Mime, and then I was able to get a taunt off onto the Crobat with the Crocodile before it goes down to a max Starfall from Clefable, which is definitely unexpected. Thankfully, he didn't end up running Mental Herb this time. I think it was a Focus Sash Crobat, but if it was, then I could have taken that information into the next game and possibly still been able to do work with the Mr. Mime against both of these Mons. Crobat doesn't really threaten a one-hit KO onto the Mr. Mime, so I felt okay about that. In this case, I just end up sending the Tentacruel out right away. I no longer have my Crocodile to Bulldoze to activate the weakness policy, but I felt like at this point he's committed his max early, and I can just keep him at low speed with the Mr. Mime just going for Icy Winds every time. Obviously the Crobat took about half from the Icy Wind, so even if it doesn't KO at this point, it's at gonna be at -2, and then it's still taunted, so it can't Tailwind anytime soon. So I just went for another Icy Wind. He ends up going into Miltank with the Crobat. That's pretty okay with me because I get another speed drop onto the Miltank, and the Clefable is gonna be at -2, the Miltank at -1, so everything's gonna outspeed both of those. Tentacruel takes a max Lightning through Protect, activating our weakness policy. The Life Orb Clefable is definitely able to do damage, but the Tentacruel being a pretty specially defensive Mon, I felt okay about just committing the Dynamax to Tentacruel here. Lemmy actually may be expecting the Tentacruel to just go ahead and ooze into the Clefable. He goes for a Max Guard. This ends up being beneficial for me just because he ends up wasting his last turn of Dynamax. But with the Tentacruel, I end up just going for a Max Geyser into the Miltank because I felt like as long as I keep pressure on the other slot, I can always get rid of Clefable later on. My Tentacruel is going to be not under too much threat of KO from the Clefable. Even with the Electric Terrain, it looked like it was only going to do about 60 to the Dynamax Tentacruel, so I get rid of the Miltank. I have Rain so that the Chandelure's Fire-type moves aren't going to be doing much damage to the partner. And at this point he ends up going in with Crobat instead of the Chandelure that he had on the back, which is pretty smart because Chandelure was definitely under KO threat from the Max Tentacruel right away. So even if he had targeted my Tentacruel, I felt okay with that because I still had 2 more Dynamax turns. I would be able to get a ton of damage onto the Miltank, set up Rain with Max Geyser, and just keep going for Icy Wind with Mr. Mime, most importantly. So in this case, he makes a pretty good play, going for Follow Me and I think it was Tailwind on Crobat. Get a lucky crit onto the Crobat. It looked like it was a roll with Icy Wind because it did almost exactly under half the first time around. And Max Geyser's able to take out the Clefable with another crit in Rain. Not exactly sure like how much Tentacruel is supposed to do into Clefable in that position, but either way I still had another max turn, so even if it didn't KO, I can always Icy Wind the Chandelure, and I had a Dragapult in the back to just take care of it. So, even if it Trick Roomed, I have Sucker Punch on Dragapult and the Ghost Berry just to take care of Chandelure in the endgame, so I felt pretty good about that. Now going into game 2, he ends up going for the same lead with a Starmie in the back instead of the Miltank, which ended up getting KO'd very quickly in the first game by the Dynamax Tentacruel. So I go with the same lead just so I can pressure the same thing onto the Crobat slot. In this case, it seems more obvious that he's going to follow me, but all I can really do is go for the same play. If I get a taunt off onto the Clefable as a follow me, it's pretty okay. Especially because him setting up Tailwind means I get a free Icy Wind off, and then neither of my mons are going to take damage with a Follow Me Tailwind. And then as we see here, actually, the Crobat goes under half, so it looked like it was definitely going to be a roll with the Icy Wind to KO the Crobat. Tailwind goes off. He has a nice tech on his Crobat with the U-turn so that it can get out and bring in something that can pressure more damage. I protect to stall out a bit of Tailwind, and then he goes for a U-turn into Mr. Mime, doing very good damage. But even with Tailwind, whatever he brings in is going to take a -1 from the Icy Wind that I'm about to go for with the Scarf Mr. Mime. And then I can possibly outspeed quite a bit of his team using the Mr. Mime after an Icy Wind drop, even in Tailwind. Especially because Clefable is now actually a -2, so it's basically at neutral. Thankfully, Clefable goes for a Moonblast into the Crocodile, so I get another move off with my Mr. Mime potentially. This was definitely a smart play on his end. He just preserves the Chandelure, which I'm obviously going to be attacking into with the Crocodile in this position. Clefable's taunted, so all I can do is Moonblast. The Moonblast may or may not have KO'd the Crocodile in that position, but he definitely didn't want to take an Icy Wind drop because of the Tentacruel that was in the back for me, or the Dragapult. Smartly KOs the Mr. Mime, so no more Icy Wind, but his Clefable is very low at this point. The Crobat in the back doesn't pose a whole lot of threat into the Tentacruel. Into the Dragapult, he's able to do more damage, but this was an okay position for me. At this point, I'm just gonna go for a Bulldoze and the Dynamax Tentacruel. We saw how much damage the Clefable was able to do into it, but I wasn't particularly scared of the Chandelure at this point, not knowing that he actually had a Psychic move on it, which would be able to hit my Tentacle for super effective damage. But since it was since Tentacruel has a high special defense, I assumed I'd be able to take it anyway. Unfortunately, Lemi actually times out here. I just double protect to stall out the Tailwind, so if he ended up going for a max, he would have got some free damage off. But yeah, now both of my mons should be faster than Chandelure, and I can also just Bulldoze it to get it down to -1 as well. So he feels pressured into going for the Mindstorm onto the Tentacruel. I just end up committing my max here, which was possibly not the best decision given that the Chandelure had a very strong Mindstorm, but again, I thought I could take it and I was ahead of game here, so as long as the Chandelure wasn't taking a KO on the Tentacruel right away with one move, then I felt okay. If you went for something like Helping Hand and Mindstorm here, then I would have got the attack off into the Chandelure instead, which would not have taken it very well, and then I had a Dragapult in the back as well, so this should have been okay. I end up doing quite a bit of damage to myself with a Bulldoze. Importantly, I get a speed drop onto the Chandelure. He followed me as the Max Geyser away, which is pretty smart. I was expecting the most him to be able to do is just Max Ghost, but the Mindstorm takes us down pretty low. However, since Chandelure is pretty frail, it's at -1 speed, so it feels like I can always get a KO onto it, especially in the rain. This turn he calls my Max Guard using the Side Shock from Starmie into the Tentacruel instead. I go for a Bulldoze to get speed control back, since the Starmie would be faster than the Tentacruel. Chandelure's at -2 now, which is good, and it took a ton of damage. Max Flare means that my Max Geysers won't be doing too much damage into the Chandelure here, but I feel like Tentacruel's done his job. Geyser should probably still take out the Chandelure at this position. He ends up going for the Max Guard, hoping I just don't target his Starmie. In this case, thankfully, Dark Slayer from Crocodile was able to just take out the Starmie, so that was a big threat to the Tentacruel all the way. Chandelure is stuck at -2, with only the Crobat to switch in. Crobat can get up Tailwind, but then Chandelure is going to be at basically neutral, still going to get outsped by both of these mons on the field, so the Crobat by itself wasn't too scary, and he just went for the Max Guard the last turn, so I can freely target his Chandelure at this point. He goes for a U-turn into the Crocodile, which was smart because of the super effective damage, possibly expecting a KO there, but even if Crocodile was to be KO'd, I was honestly pretty okay with giving up both of these. I was always going to get at least one move off before one of them went down. And then Dragapult again was in the back here, so Dragapult's able to go for a Dragon Darts on whatever survived the turn without really being in risk of getting KO'd right away, so end up being able to take the game 2 as well, thankfully. So good games to Lemi. I think his team is really strong, actually. It was pretty smart of him to not bring the Garchomp in this position, because I had a Specs Gardevoir as well as a Scarf Mr. Mime, obviously, which does 4 times effective damage, and then the Speed Drop plus the Gardevoir Dazzling Gleam was going to be able to do a ton of damage, even if it was like Assault Vest or something, so yeah, well done to him. And I'm actually recording this at the end of week 5 of the draft league, so the group stage of the league is over. Lemi had a very strong run, so I wanted to say congrats to him, and thank you again for letting me use the VOD, and good luck in the playoffs. And for everyone else, I hope you enjoyed the video.